special episode of the Silmarillion Film Project. I am your co-host, Dave Kale. And we are very excited to be broadcasting today because it is I believe, the 80th anniversary of the publication of The Hobbit. Is that right? Corey Olson, the Tolkien professor, who is also joining me this morning.
What a smooth working in of the introduction there, Dave. Yeah, that was great.
That's right, though. 80th anniversary, right?
It is actually technically yesterday. It was published yesterday. So yesterday's it's always been a little bit sort of sad that there's that 1 day offset between the publication date of The Hobbit and the birthday of Bilbo and Frodo. It's like so close, but not quite the same day. But anyway, yeah. So generally it kind of gets rolled into one big old celebration.
Right.
But anyway, so today is Bilbo and Frodo's birthday, and yesterday was the 80th anniversary of the publication of The Hobbit, and last Friday, of course, was the 40th anniversary of the publication of the Silmarillion. So.
Why couldn't they? I mean, come on, get it together. Just publish everything on the 22nd. Make it easy for us.
I know, right? I begged so hard when my book came out. I begged so hard to have it come out on the 21st, so it would have been published on the 75th anniversary of The Hobbit. But they published it on the 17th. I'm like, the 17th? Really? Come on.
What are you doing? Get it together.
To whom does that make sense? But
yeah. That's not even on sort of the short list of days that would make sense.
I know. Well, anyway.
Maybe 50 years from now, that one will be celebrated too.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. That seems super likely.
But we are broadcasting on Hobbit Day, which is Bilbo and Frodo's birthday. And of course, this is also exciting because it marks the beginning of the Signum University fall fundraising campaign.
That's right. It is right. Yeah, it's and this is of course always a really big deal every fall. We do our fundraising campaign, and this is our 5th campaign now, or so. We're going into our 5th year of the campaign, our 7th year of existence at Signum University, and we have been so blessed by the the encouragement and support of our students and listeners for many years now. And we're really sort of trusting to people's support again this year. Really fun campaign. And one thing I wanted to talk about right away, because this is SilmFilm specific. One of the things that I wanted to do this year, I wanted to do a couple things a little bit differently with the fundraising campaign. And so let me explain how this is going to work in a SilmFilm context. I want to do a special set of prize giveaways to SilmFilm viewers, both those of you who attend live and also those of you who are listening to this session after the fact, because I know very many of our SilmFilm people can't attend live at this particular time slot, but listen to the episode in the podcast afterwards or watch it on YouTube or whatever. So we are
lucky I make it.
Right, exactly. Speaking of which, of course, Trish couldn't make it today, unfortunately. So Trish isn't able to be with us.
I was about to say we're down. We're short one voice.
Exactly.
We'll do our best to carry on.
That's right. So let me explain how this is going to work. We have we have our session here today on the 22nd. Our next SilmFilm session, our next regularly scheduled SilmFilm session would be on Friday, October 6th, 2 weeks from today. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to reschedule that because that's the day I am flying out to Iowa for the regional event that I've been announcing. We talked about that, I think, the last 2 sessions. Our Midwest regional gathering, which is going to be super fun on October 7th out in Waterloo, Iowa. So I'm going to be in a plane on that Friday the 6th. So we'll need to push that next episode forward to the 13th, which happens to be the second to last day of the fundraising campaign. We're having our culminating day-long Signum Webathon on Saturday the 14th this year. So So anyway, yeah. So as it happens, we were doing this one SilmFilm episode at the very beginning of the campaign, and our next SilmFilm episode will be near the very end of the campaign. So here's how it's going to work. In between those times, so we have 3 weeks in between today and our next SilmFilm episode. During that time, everybody who makes a donation to Signum University and sort of indicates that it's for SilmFilm, and I'll explain that in a second, will be entered into a drawing. We're going to give away books to people. These are resources, practical resources for those of you SilmFilm listeners. So you're going to get a choice of one of 3 books. If you win, you will get either Ted Naismith's illustrated Silmarillion, which we've given away before, and of course has obvious relevance to the Silmarillion adaptation, or the boxed set of the History of Middle-earth volumes 1 through 5. So you will have heard us refer to the Book of Lost Tales and some of the earlier stuff, the Lays of the Lay of Lathian and stuff like that, the Ways of Valerian. So the box set 1 through 5 contains all of that early Silmarillion material, basically from the very beginning of Tolkien's Silmarillion conceptions all the way through what he finished writing, like what he put down in order to begin writing The Lord of the Rings, essentially. So lots of really, really great stuff. So if you don't have that, you could choose to get that to expand your Tolkien bookshelf. And the third option is going to be the lovely Art of the Lord of the Rings, edited by Hammond and Skull. This just a wonderful, wonderful study of Tolkien's own art, which is again really interesting in thinking about visualizing and conceiving of Middle-earth as we've been doing. So as I say, everybody who donates to Signum and marks it with the SilmFilm, and here's how you do that, by the way. In order to enter in the drawing, here's all you have to do: make a donation to Signum. So go to signumuniversity.org/donate, or just go to our homepage and click on the Donate tab on the far right-hand side. It'll take you to the Donate Now page. If you make a donation of any size to Signum University and then send an email afterwards, and the email is just very simply to donate@signumu.org. Donate@signumu.org. Send an email there and just put SilmFilm in the title, right? Or in the subject line of your email, and then we'll basically sort of count your donation in the pool, and it will be entered in the drawing, from which you will get one of the 3 winners will get those 3 gifts. But wait, there's more. The largest gift that we get that is marked SilmFilm will win our grand prize, our grand SilmFilm prize for this drawing, and the grand prize is to be an exec for the day. So you get to come and join us and participate in the discussion, and kind of throw your weight around here in deciding what's gonna be happening in the in the episode of your choice. So you can pick something from later on in season 3. Yeah. So okay. So that's how it works. So again, go to signumuniversity.org/donate, right? That'll take you to our donation page. Make a donation to support Signum University, and then send an email to donate@signumu.org and mention SilmFilm in the subject line, so that we know you want to enter that donation into our drawing for SilmFilm, and we will we'll enter you into that. And again, 3 people randomly will win the book of their choice from those 3 that I mentioned, and the largest donation will win our grand prize, which is to be an exec for the day. So as Karita said, so that you too can go mad with power. So that's exactly the plan.
So let's review one more time.
Okay.
So go to signumuniversity.org/donate.
Yep.
Make a donation of any size. Obviously, the larger the better, because you're increasing your chances of becoming an exec for a day.
Exactly.
Send an email to donation@signumu.org. And what goes in the subject?
Donate at.
Donate, yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Donate@signumu.org.
That's right.
Now I'm confusing things by reviewing. What goes in the subject line?
Yeah, exactly. Mention SilmFilm in the subject line, and then we'll know to enter you into the SilmFilm drawing for that. Yep, exactly. So again, this is going to be open anytime between starting right now and going all the way through our episode. So we'll announce the winners in the episode in the next episode that we do on October 13th. So that will be. So that'll be that. So people. So again, so even for those of you who are listening at home, I know, I've heard from people sometimes who, when we talk about sort of things live during the show, we'll sort of, email afterwards and be like, oh, I just heard about this, but like it's already over, So we wanted to make sure to give an opportunity for people to join in. For this, even when they're listening asynchronously. So that's what's going to happen. We're also going to be doing other things. I recommend to you, so if you go to the Signum University YouTube channel, I just posted a 20-minute video, sort of describing the campaign and what's happening in the campaign. And so you can hear more about other events going on. We're going to be doing our annual webathon at the end, of course, as I've mentioned, on Saturday the 14th. And I think we're going to have some SilmFilm related discussion there as well. So, so there'll be some other stuff going on, and we'll be explaining that and announcing that more during our next session as well. All right. And of course, it's Hobbit Day. So on a pure Hobbit Day piece of news, tonight I'm going to be hosting a casual Tolkien reading time. We're going to have a Tolkien reading and followed by light, casual, spontaneous discussion. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This announcement will not be so very useful for people listening asynchronously. But for those of you who are here with me, I hope you'll consider joining me tonight. I have posted on my my Twitter page, my Tolkien Professor Twitter account, a poll for which passage you would most like to hear me read and talk about tonight. So I encourage you to go and vote. If you are on Twitter, let me check and see. I want to see what the latest. Okay, so the 4 passages, by the way, that I nominated to read are Eucatastrophe at Pelennor. So that's of course like the battle leading right up to the arrival of Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli in the ships with black sails. Niggle's Parish, the end of Leaf by Niggle, one of my favorite parts of Tolkien. Funny poems of the 1920s. Do you want to hear the original version of the Oliphant poem? The unrecognizable early version of the Oliphant poem, which is completely hilarious? Vote for Funny Poems of the 1920s. And then also Conversation with Smaug. So we'll read from the Inside Information chapter of The Hobbit. So far, Conversation with Smaug is winning handily. So Marie, no, I was going to include Goblin Feet among funny poems of the 1920s, but heck, that's a funny poem of the 19-teens actually. But Goblin Feet is kind of fun. I'll read some of the other early poems there perhaps. Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Marie, for sending me a copy. I was going to go fetch that, but I didn't get a chance. So yeah, here's the link to the YouTube video for the campaign for those of you who are here with us live, and also for those of you who are joining us on our Twitch channel, which is great. And good to see you guys. I see the Locho Ranger and Lee Nightingales and Milthaliel and Phil Boswell there. Good to see you guys there. A happy Hobbit Day to you. And thanks for joining us. So, all right. So that's the stuff that's going on. That's at least a glimpse of the stuff that's going on today. Lots of really fun stuff. But we've got a lot of SilmFilm to talk about today because, of course, as you'll remember, we didn't quite finish with our kinslaying episode. There were still a few important unresolved questions that we need to go back to. Before we can even carry on with episode 3. So let's jump right to that. All right.
As you can hear from Wally in the background, he's excited to to take this topic back up.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I could tell he was kind of impatient with us for not getting through that last time. So he's showing remarkable restraint, I think, all things considered. All right. So the big question, of course, that we didn't really get to talk about last time was the Galadriel question. How is Galadriel going to act in and during the kinslaying? And this is important for a couple different reasons. One, there are two primary reasons that I would say why this is important. The biggest one is it impacts the larger question of like which Galadriel are we going to be talking about, you know? And we talked about this a little bit earlier. You know, we talked about this in for episode 2 when episode 1 when we were showing her reactions to Feanor's speech. And remember, the question was, like, which Galadriel are we talking about? Of the different Galadriels that Tolkien kind of proposed that we see in Unfinished Tales, the different versions of Galadriel's character, which one was? And we decided last, or the time before last, on sort of the more fallible of the Galadriels, not the one who is setting out for Middle-earth independently of the rest of the Noldor, with pure heart and unwavering purpose to oppose Feanor and assist the Valar and everything else. We wanted her, no super Galadriel. We wanted her to be fun, but we were but in a sense we're kind of compromising, right? That because we did want her still to be opposed to Feanor. So she's resistant to Feanor, but yet she is drawn to, as the published Silmarillion says, drawn to having a realm of her own. Like, she really likes that idea. So we decided to have her eager to go back to Middle-earth, but still resistant to Feanor, right? So how do we fit her into the kinslaying in that context? Now, the second reason why it's important, of course, is that Galadriel, in the published Silmarillion, Galadriel is one of the chief sort of spokespersons for the Noldor and the kinslaying in the Thingol and Melian context, right? So of the Noldor who come into contact with Thingol and Melian, when Thingol, of course, finds out that his brother, his brother's people were killed, and it's kind of a big deal, right, to Thingol, the former leader of the Teleri, that the Teleri were slaughtered by the Noldor on the Noldor's way out of town. Galadriel is one of the ones who's going to be really put on the spot about that, and that conversation between Galadriel and Melian is kind of a big deal, right? So thinking towards that and what is going to be Galadriel's position toward, it's one of the reasons to kind of set her up for what her position is going to be as one of the really important characters that's kind of going between, really, the Noldor in Beleriand and Thingol and Melian in Beleriand. So, let's think about Galadriel. Oh, quick side question from Phil Boswell about should the Teleri, the Teleri call themselves the Lindar, the singers, right? Which is sort of a memory of the old name of the Teleri, which was the Solosimpi, the Shoreland Pipers. But anyway, Phil, I'm inclined against it for clarity purposes. I mean, like, let's be honest. There's enough different names of people in Tolkien without our going out of our way to include every single possible permutation. And I do think that we're likely to confuse people if I think if our viewers can keep the Teleri, the Noldor, and the Vanyar straight, we've accomplished a thing. If they are able, as we hope, to keep like the people of Linway who separated off before, and the people of Círdan who stayed at the Havens, and the people of Elwë who came and followed him until Thingol and Melian emerged and set up their own king. If they can keep all that straight, they're doing super well, right? And we've done our job exceptionally well. So I think trying to overcomplicate it is probably not a good idea. Okay, but anyway, back to the Galadriel question. Now, we remember that the basic, just a quick review of the basic paradigm of the kinslaying, like the basic sequence of the kinslaying. We had Fëanor and his people on the ships, right? They're in front. They go on. They just walk on from the quays onto the ships and start seizing them and taking them out. Some of them are occupied by Teleri. Others will have the Teleri swiftly pursuing them in smaller boats, and so we will have lots of pushing and shoving and fisticuffs breaking out as the Teleri try to retain control of their ships. Fëanor will be the one to shed the first blood and kill the first person in the fight to retain control of the ship that he has. Olwe will come and board the ship with Fëanor in it to try to reason with Fëanor and get him to turn back and stop stealing their ships. The people of Fingolfin are following behind, so when they see the ships going out into the harbor, they see the fight going on. Remember, we had that arch above the exit to the harbor, sort of the gateway out of the harbor, and we had that lined with archers, right, with Teleri archers. So they form up there, and they're ready to shoot the Noldor, though they're reluctant to start the bloodshed. When they see the bloodshed begin on board ship, they start shooting, and that's what Fingolfin sees when he comes down. He sees what looks like an ambush. What looks like a trap set by the Teleri, and he goes to fight the archers and to drive them from the arch to clear the way for Fëanor and the other Noldor who are sailing out. That's when his sister is killed, and he then goes and kills a bunch of people. So Fingolfin is very much guilty of blood under some misapprehensions, right? I mean, there's some like tragic misunderstanding on both sides there, and I think that can work really, really well. And Olwe gets killed on shipboard by Fëanor there, and Finarfin. And he does not fight, right? He comes down after the fighting is already engaged, and we had him throwing his sword away and just kind of being horrified at the whole thing. So where's Galadriel? She's not going to be on board the ships with the Fëanorians, right? Because she's going to have distanced herself already from Fëanor. So she could be. Do we want her? So it seems to me that the first and most important question with Galadriel about her participation in the kinslaying, should she be with the host of Fingolfin and involved in the fighting up to and on the arch, or should she be with the host of Finarfin and merely coming in and witnessing it at the end? Do we want her to be guilty, essentially? Do we want her to shed blood at the kinslaying, or merely to be a witness to it? Tony is voting for her being with Finarfin so that she can claim blamelessness with Melian later on. I certainly do agree that actually making her guilty would be interesting, but it would complicate things later on, right? I mean, if she actually has blood on her hands, it does make it trickier.
What if perhaps she has some blood on her hands, but it's happenstance, or it's not hard to imagine a new a contingent of Noldor showing up, and then in the thick of things, and having Teleri attack them, because at that point you kind of got to assume that any Noldor show up are just reinforcements. Right. So maybe she defends herself, which is understandable, but still wouldn't make her blameless in the eyes of the Sindar.
Right.
Something tragic like that, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. There was some thought, as Maria's reminding me, that she could join in to help defend the Teleri. That she could just be so horrified that she takes action on the other side. I could even imagine a situation in which she did both, essentially, right? In which she, one thing that I think would be interesting would be to have Galadriel be one of the only people there who realizes the mistakes. So we have some misunderstandings on both sides, right? Especially, again, to Fingolfin, the archers on the bridge look bad, right? And he makes an understandable error in his interpretation of the event, right? Similarly, the Teleri make an understandable misinterpretation of his charging towards them, right? Neither of them has lethal intention towards the other initially, but it's the Teleri that open fire first, assuming that Fingolfin and his people are charging up to kill them. Maybe we have Galadriel realize, the tragedy that is unfolding, right? Put her in a position of being not exactly outside it, but being the one to perceive the tragic irony of what's going on and trying to stop it, even though she fails ultimately to do that. Yeah. Brianna was suggesting that maybe we could have Galadriel actually intervene and stop Feanor from killing Olwe. Well, Brianna, the only problem with that plan is that it ends up with Olwe not dying, which I really want to kill Olwe. And nothing personal, but yeah, Tony suggests that it would be interesting if she speaks to Olwe in favor of Feanor initially. But then is so frustrated with Feanor's arrogance, she leaves and rejoins Finarfin's people before the battle. Yeah, I mean, of course, Tony, one of the things that we have to be careful of, right? She can't be so reactionary against Feanor that she sticks with Finarfin, right? At the end of the day, she's not going to stay with her dad, right? She's not going to stay behind. She's going to go ahead. And I mean, I do think that it's okay. I would kind of like to introduce an element of that other Galadriel. That is, I'd like to introduce an element of Galadriel wanting to oppose Feanor, right? I don't want, I can't turn back and stay home because I don't want to leave, all of my kin and family to that madman, right? So I want to go to oppose Feanor, but again, her motives there are not pure. She also wants to go. She wants power for herself. She could even see. She wouldn't see Feanor as a kind of rival, though. That's not.
I wonder right. If you can kind of sort of do sort of the well-intentioned, the stated in good intention of someone has to go and oppose him and look out for our people. But have it mingled with pride. Right. Because I feel like that's kind of the interesting hybrid Galadriel, right? The one who has the best of intentions, but is polluted by that Feanorian pride.
Right. Exactly. And really, we're just planting the seeds of that, right? I mean, really, when Galadriel is going to her role in the early story isn't going to be huge. And by early story, I mean the whole first age, essentially. Her role in the whole first age isn't huge. Where Galadriel really comes into her own is in the second age, right? So I think in some ways, the crucial point for Galadriel's character, and here I'm thinking towards what Anarwin on the Twitch chat was just saying, that, she is the last to return from Middle-earth, and there has to be a reason for that. Yeah, exactly. That is a big deal. And even, her temptation with the One Ring and everything, it's a big deal. And we're kind of ultimately building up to that. But I think the real turning point for Galadriel is her choice not to leave after the War of Wrath, and then what she does in the Second Age, right? The Second Age is when Galadriel really establishes herself as one of the dominant powers of Middle-earth. And we see, and we can follow up many of the suggestions of stories that are pointed to in the Unfinished Tales, Celeborn and Galadriel stuff, such as her being involved with Celebrimbor and the establishment of her sort of encouraging the establishment of the kingdom of Eregion, her establishment of her sort of forging the alliance between the elves of Holland or Eregion and the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, the way that she's kind of strategizing. So I mean, it's pretty easy to kind of take Galadriel's, even the establishment of her kingdom in Lothlorien, right, can have some kind of interesting twists to it and be connected with her own seeking of power. So like I said, that's kind of the big Galadriel story. So we're just planting seeds of what's going to be happening later on there. So okay, coming back then. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to say about with Feanor. The more I was talking about it, the more I was thinking, the idea of her opposing Feanor openly, right, and of her sort of considering herself, in some sense, like a guard against Feanor, or like, I need to protect the rest of the Noldor from Feanor. I think that would come across really weird. Because remember, we've shown in season 2, we showed Galadriel as a little girl, with Feanor already in his power and contemplating the forging of the Silmarils. They're not peers. Galadriel and Feanor are not peers. He is, at his height, and she's still young, and has no real clear prominence, right? So I think we can't push that too far. I think we can't push an open rivalry between Galadriel and Feanor too far. But at the same time, all of our viewers are going to understand, right? They're all going to understand the significance of, like, why we stick with Galadriel. Like, she's important, right? I mean, she's going to stand out to everybody. So our viewers are likely to care what she does and what she's thinking about things, even if she is not yet truly, like, in a prominent sort of leadership role among the other Noldor at that stage. Karita is saying that she thinks her killing Galadriel's killing to defend someone makes her complicated and interesting. Good and bad actions and motives in a single moment. Yes. What if we make it even one step more complicated than that? Because I agree that one thing that I want to be cautious of. One thing I want to be cautious of is that confrontation with Melian later on. Remember, the phrase in the published Silmarillion is, Thingol says to, the other children of Finarfin, he says, I marvel at you that you come to me thus red-handed from the killing of your kin, right? And they're like, oh, not all of us come red-handed, right? Even though they're unwilling to throw, like Finrod is unwilling to throw even the Feanorians under the bus. If Galadriel is in fact red-handed with the blood of her kin, it's a little awkward, right? And how is she going to be? Melian could be understanding or whatever, but I don't think. It's hard for me to see how Thingol is going to be okay with, like, why would he not kick her out? And if he does, what would that do with the story? I mean, what would we do with her at that point? I don't think we want to go there necessarily. So having her actually, having held a sword which killed one of the Teleri is I think maybe a little bit further than we want to go. Yeah, Karita, I was thinking that too. Karita was suggesting maybe she does kill a Teleri and then, like, sort of regrets it, sees the problem, and sort of switches around and supports the Teleri. That, I think, just kind of makes her it risks making her just look weak and like a traitor to both sides, right? And hated by all and loved by none, which we'd have to be careful of. Yeah. So Marie, I agree. I think mostly innocent is how we need to do it. What about this? What if she's guilty, but in a slightly more complex or indirect way? What if she does something which leads to the death of others, even though she doesn't kill them herself? What if she, I don't know what, gives bad advice or attempts to intervene in order to cause peace? Like, I'm imagining, for instance, a situation where she tries to hold back, one of the other, the people of Fingolfin. So I'm imagining her here with the people of Fingolfin. So one of the other of Fingolfin's people is like getting ready to charge up towards the Teleri and gonna attack them and kill them. And she tries to stop him, and she so she stops him, and like he drops his, and as soon as he drops his shield, like he's shot by one of the Teleri, so that it looks like it's her fault, right? I don't know, something like that, like it doesn't just look like, I mean, it is her fault. Like she says, drop your guard, and then they get killed, right? Something in that line, but maybe it should work the other way around. Maybe what she's doing should lead to the death of the Teleri instead. Do you see the kind of thing that I'm getting at, though? Like something more tragic, right? Which would weigh on her with guilt, right? She would feel like that she played a role and not a good one, right? One which ended in the death, even though she might not herself strike a blow. In fact, this occurrence could lead her to stand aside. We could see her while the rest of the people of Fingolfin charge in. She could stand aside, right? And we could show her standing aside. What do you think, Dave? Is this a little too contorted?
No, I think this is heading in the right direction. I think whereas Feanor's story is one of kind of well-intentioned, or not well-intentioned, is a sort of overtly, I don't know if I really want to use the word corrupt, but he's not evil per se, but he is very clearly heading in the wrong direction. His pride is he's wearing sort of a really, really pernicious pride on his sleeve. I think Galadriel's story, at least the way we're posing it with kind of the hybrid Galadriel, is one of sort of the road to hell being paved with good intentions. Yes. Of being of sort of the which is a story we see in Tolkien repeatedly.
Yes, absolutely.
Of people looking and saying, like, I have to get involved. It has to be me. I have to do this because look, all this other bad stuff will happen if I don't do this. If I don't get involved, and what we see is that frequently when we see characters in that situation in Tolkien, it's hard to see it. It's hard to imagine any other choice that they could make because we as the readers, as sort of prideful human beings ourselves, we look and we think, well, yeah, of course they have to do that. They can't do other than they did. Right. Nonetheless, there end up being oftentimes being negative consequences that they or their descendants end up having, spending a long time trying to pay down the debt that they incur. And with Galadriel's story, it comes full circle with her finally realizing in the end that with Frodo in the ring, the way for her to help is to not be involved, is
Yeah.
to back off, right?
Yeah.
Like as an act of humility of saying, this isn't in my hands anymore. You know, I'll support you and I'll help you, but I'm not going to be directly involved. I won't take the ring by force. I won't accept the ring when offered freely to me.
Right.
I won't go on the quest. My job is to counsel you and give you shelter, but then otherwise to just be hands off,
Right.
back off.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So I want to do something with her. I want to bookend her full story
Mm-hmm.
with something at the beginning that involves the opposite decision.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as Tony was just saying, Galadriel's story is ultimately a redemption story. So we are in these early stages setting up that moment of redemption that's going to happen in the Lord of the Rings, as you were pointing to. That's exactly, I think, how we need to be thinking of it there. Bunch of really interesting suggestions. In the Twitch chat, Urstarg was saying, maybe she leads Fingolfin to misjudge the situation, or maybe she, perhaps she plays an instrumental role in the misunderstanding that leads to the battle. That would be really kind of interesting. Milthaliel suggested that maybe she convinced a group of Teleri to lay down their arms and then they're killed right after they lay down their arms. That too, again, I'm not 100% sure how the logistics of it would work, right? But that kind of thing is exactly in the sort of direction that I'm thinking of. I really like. Karita was pointing out that thinking forward to her. I sang of leaves of gold, and leaves of gold there grew song, right, in the Lord of the Rings. Karita says if her power lies in speaking, singing things into being in that way, maybe we start off with her sort of trying to speak peace into existence and failing, right, and that really haunts her, and could be, of course, one of the things which not only just haunts her and makes her feel bad, but even leads to her trying to seize power later on, right? I mean, maybe one of the things that we see her do, one of the things that, all this stuff informs her decision in the Second Age to take a more proactive role and say, okay, I saw things go wrong the first time. I sort of sat on the sidelines and, I played an unfortunate role, even if not a central role, but still an unfortunate role at the kinslaying. That was kind of scarring. And then I was kind of on the sidelines and watched things go really badly, in the First Age during the war against Morgoth. So my response, I'm going to take matters into my own hands, right? And that's what she does in the Second Age. And that's why she decides to stay and not return into the West. And that's what she then ends up doing in the Second Age. And it's that then that she's finally sort of working through and kind of repenting of when she refuses the Ring of Power. So, yeah, I like this. So let's see. So, Marie, Nick, do you think you guys have enough to work with? Can you make this happen some way? I'm not committing myself because I don't see it yet. I don't have a clear picture of exactly the role, exactly what it is that she could do. But I think all of these ideas are pointing in the right direction. For her to be, the essence of it is for her to be culpable in some way, for her to have guilt on her head, but not blood on her hands, right? And to have that haunt her and have her desire to take a stronger role, but it's going to be something which is in the shorter term. Of course, this is elvish short term, right? In the next few millennia, it's gonna lead her actually to making some wrong decisions, and we can see in some of her conversations with Melian that we'll get to do later on. We'll sort of see her kind of working through that, and working towards the sort of questionable answer that she's going to have. Okay, great. Nick says they've got our back. Marie says they'll be able to come up with something which I will surely veto later. So I agree. That sounds great. That sounds like a plan to me. Okay, very good. So I think now the other two things that we wanted to come back to from the end of the kinslaying, the reaction of the Valar and the storm of Uinen. So again, just to remind people, the reaction of the Valar, the non-reaction of the Valar really is what we mean, right? So the Valar are going to know that the kinslaying happened. The kinslaying is going to be a super huge deal. They are going to decide, however, nobody can intervene, right? No one, the Valar don't rush down to stop this happening, nor do they arrest the Noldor or smite them or something like that right away. In fact, the Valar are forbidden to intervene and oppose the Noldor. So how does that happen, right? What's that conversation like among the Valar as that happens? Do we have who wants to go rush off and smite the Noldor? And how is the decision made not to do that? So that's one question. The other is Uinen. Of course, we know in the published text that ban is passed, they're not allowed to do anything, but Uinen kind of does anyway, right? Because she and Ase are kind of anti-establishment in that way, right? So she weeps for the death of the Teleri, and when she is weeping and angry, a great storm arises, and many of the Feanorians are wrecked and drowned as a result. So I guess let's do the Valar first. Let's talk about the conversation with the Valar. First of all, Dave, should we depict it? I kind of think we should. I guess in large part because I am generally pro ramping up the presence, maintaining the presence of the Valar. I don't want to leave the Valar behind. I don't want to forget about the Valar. Obviously, they're not going to be totally central characters, but I don't want to follow the lead of the published Silmarillion in this, in basically leaving Valinor and most of the Valar behind completely after the hiding of Valinor, and then just following the things that are going on in Middle-earth as if the Valar are not paying attention or not involved in any way, most of the the vast majority of the time. I don't really want to do that. I want to show the Valar's involvement a little bit more. And Marie, I agree. I do think that the audience is going to wonder why no one is stepping in to stop the kinslaying. I think we do need to explain why it's permitted to happen. So what do you guys? So we have a bunch of suggestions of where the Valar themselves fall out on the question of how to respond to the kinslaying. You are right, Phil, that Tulkas is usually portrayed as the most impulsive of the Valar, and we've certainly availed ourselves of that at various other points earlier on. Somebody, who was it? Hakan was asking, why not give the desire to smite to Manwë just for once, instead of always making him the peacemaker? It's an interesting idea, Hakan. It's hard to see somebody overruling Manwë, right? Where does the decree come from? It could come from Mandos, right? But if Manwë gets overruled by Mandos, I'm not sure that creates a kind of a comfortable situation, right? Marie suggests Varda putting a discreet hand on Manwë's arm, right, to sort of restrain him. Possibly. One thing, by the way, that I feel pretty strongly about, Manwë should be one of the most outspoken in favor of smiting the Noldor. Because Manwë was the one that was closest to them. This is something that doesn't get talked about a lot, and it gets kind of dropped in the published Silmarillion, but it is very explicit in the earlier versions. I'm pretty sure it is still there very explicitly in the 1937 Quenta Silmarillion, again, the one that Tolkien put down when he picked up The Lord of the Rings. Pretty explicit that Manwë is ticked. Like, when Manwë feels personally betrayed by the Noldor, and when the Noldor rebel and leave, he is their enemy at that point. I mean, he's sad, and he's reconciled to Finarfin and his people when they return. But he writes them off. He's the most upset of the lot. Oh, sorry, I meant Aule. I was misspeaking. I meant Aule. I apologize for misspeaking there. Yeah, Aule. I'm talking about Aule there. Aule is the one who is closest to them and who is therefore angry. I apologize for that. Just a misspeaking on my part. Yeah. So Aule is the one who feels personally betrayed, and so I would have him leading the charge against them. Because Manwë is not, it's hard basically. Manwë is kind of in the judicial seat here, and one who has sort of the most objectivity in the whole situation. And the other thing I'm thinking here, that famous conversation that so many people like to quote, the conversation between Mandos and Manwë, the one about that evil shall be good to have been, and Mandos says, and yet remain evil, right? I would like to integrate that conversation into this scene, essentially, to have Manwë's decision not to smite, right? His decision to urge all of the angry Valar to hold on and not smite. I would like to have that linked explicitly to Manwë's grief over the fall of Fëanor and the Noldor, right? That he's not just saying, oh, let's be merciful, right? Let's not smite. It's like, they deserve it, but let's not smite them because we're big that way, right? That's not his argument. I think that the thing that Manwë should be suggesting, right? Like, essentially, the anti-Noldor folks are, will be emphasizing the guilt of the Noldor, right? The guilt of the Noldor, they have done wrong, they should be punished for what they've done. And Manwë's counter to that will essentially be, they have. Look what's happened to them, right? Look what they have done to themselves. Look how far they have fallen. Look at the wreck that is the Noldor. Now, think of the potential of the Noldor. Think of the role that they were meant to play. Think of what we were trying to build when we brought them here, and look at the wreck of things, right? The fall of the tragedy. Yes, the slaying of the Teleri is a tragedy, and Manwë obviously is going to take away from that. The dead Teleri are tragic, but remember our conversation from last time, right? Dead elves are not necessarily, like, death isn't necessarily the worst thing that can happen to an elf, right? Or rather, being an innocent who is slain in a good cause is by far not the worst thing that can happen to an elf, right? There are many people who argue it's not the worst thing that can happen to anybody, but it's certainly not the worst thing that can happen to an elf. An elf who, and for those of you who follow the Mythgard Academy stuff, may recognize the overtone of Boethius and what I'm about to say, from Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy that we studied in that class a few months back. With elves, it seems even more importantly true than Boethius was trying to argue. Those who do the evil thing, who perform the evil acts, an elf who murders his kin unlawfully, there is a clearer sense, clearer in the case of elves, given their immortality and the fact that death is a sort of relocation, right? Within the context of elvish life in Arda, a temporary relocation, right? And a change, as we talked about last time. But anyway, the elf who slays his kin unjustly receives more harm than the kin who is unjustly slain, right? There is a sense in which actually the wrong that has been done to the victim is more easily redressed in the case of elves than the wrong that the killer has done to himself. See what I mean by that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. Marie says it much more succinctly than I'm saying it. Corruption is a fate worse than death. Absolutely. And that's the point that Manwë would make, essentially. Manwë would say, like, the death of the Teleri is horrible, and the Noldor are guilty and have done wrong. That's the big tragedy here. Like, the biggest tragedy, the thing that he is mostly mourning over, is the fall of the Noldor and of Fëanor himself. Yeah. So anyway, so exactly, Lance. The fall of Fëanor is not the least of the evil works of Melkor. Absolutely. So I think it would be really neat to make that point, and that seems like a very Manwë thing, not only fitting with what Manwë in the text says, but also fitting the Manwë that we have been depicting. I mean, thinking about the Manwë at the end of season 1, right? The Manwë who is weeping at the war to begin all wars and all that, so the Manwë who decided to give Melkor probation, right? Those things, it seems to fit within that. So, yeah. I think that works really well. So who else would anyone be speaking up not pro Noldor exactly, because who's going to defend what they're doing, but I could see like a couple very angry, rash folks, right? Like Aule and probably Tolkas, standing up to say, like, let's go, like, beat the tar out of the Noldor to pay them out for what they've, to punish them for what they've done. Would anyone speak for the Noldor? Tony suggests Nienna. Nienna certainly plays a role, but I suspect that her role would be her normal one, right? She'll be weeping, and we can kind of cut to the tears of Nienna from Mandos' speech, right in the middle of Mandos' speech. So yeah, the pro Noldor argument, I think, would be not, again, nobody trying to defend or excuse what the crimes that have been committed, but basically some who would argue against painting them all with the same brush, right? Some who would urge understanding, right? That all isn't as not all of them were guilty. Many of them didn't understand what was happening. I could see some people saying that. Interesting. Zachary is suggesting Varda. Zachary, thinking forward to the way that the Noldor call upon Varda, right? I mean, just thinking about Gildor and Glorian song, right? Their song in the Fellowship of the Ring there, and the way that they address Elbereth and the way they talk about Elbereth. Kind of seems like maybe actually she should speak up for the Noldor, right? But again, what she would do would basically say, she would oppose those who are more rash and thoroughgoing in their opposition and merely say it's not as simple as that, right? It's not, there's more to it than that. And very good, Phil Boswell reminds us that Orome got on fairly well with the Sons of Fëanor, right? Remember him hanging out with Celegorm. So, he might argue for restraint. I could see that. Marie, great question. What does Olmo think? Is he even there? Good follow-up question, Marie. We could always cop out and just have him be absent at the time. And we know he's usually absent, right? You know, he's very rarely does he attend any of the councils. So, in fact, Marie, that might set the stage a little bit for Uanin's deviation, right? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think that would, if he's absent, we could have, you know, I'll say an Uanin, you know, exchange a significant look and walk out of the room, right? You know, like they're not gonna, you know, where their boss is away, so so they have their own ideas, and that is very much kind of in I'll say an Uanin's character, right? So that would seem to work. Zachary asks a great question. What about Yavanna? Should she be with or against her husband? I would see her being sort of relatively, certainly less passionate than Aule in that case. But I wouldn't necessarily see her opposing him. I don't see Yavanna necessarily having a big stake in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Other than sort of general, I imagine there's sort of among the Valar, there's a general sorrow at what's happened,
right,
and disapproval of what the Noldor have done. But I don't think among folks, I don't think Yavanna would have the greatest visceral reaction to the
right.
Noldor, to the Kinslinger, the Noldor going east, unless is there any kind of lingering, simmering like, is there anything still sort of a lingering resentment about the trees?
Exactly.
Unwillingness to help?
Just what Nick was just pointing to. Yeah, I mean, she certainly, as Nick says, has no great love for Feanor, right? I don't think that we want to, there's a risk that it would make her look petty, right?
Yeah.
You know, to be like, well, let's smite Feanor because he said no to me, and if I can't have my trees, then, you know, I mean, obviously we wouldn't depict it that way, but there's a risk there, you know. I'm thinking of maybe what we do with Yavanna is have her just be silent and stony-faced, essentially, and, you know, so, like, we can see that there's, like, she's upset and there's conflict within her, but she doesn't commit herself in this debate, and then that way people can read it how they want, right? Can sort of fit it in how best it how best it works.
Just an off the wall thought. Well, regarding the trees, there's no chance that, for example, so the main reason, you know, I feel like if they were going to feel, you know, if the trees played a role in this, I would think it would be a role of sort of like a desire to still compel Feanor to help. But of course, Feanor no longer has possession of the Silmarils.
So right, yeah.
It's sort of pointless. Could there be any contingent among the Valar of people sort of disapproving of the means, but approving of the end? Like, you know, yeah, well, you know, hey, he's going to go try to get the Silmarils back, and we need them to save the trees anyway. That's a good thing, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think having her be silent and not be an active participant is probably best. But yeah, I mean, all of these are factors, right? All of these things are sort of issues that are kind of lingering in the background. Are there any among the Valar that would be maybe tacitly or silently, if not supporting what the Noldor are doing, maybe somewhat secretly pleased that that someone's going to oppose Morgoth and not just like give him free reign in Middle Earth? My vote would be Orome.
Someone.
My vote would be Orome. Orome has always been the take the fight to the enemy in Middle Earth guy, right? From season
not
one.
Tolkas?
Well, Tolkis too, but Orome he's the hunter, right? I mean, that's how he finds the elves in the first place, right? So he's the one. So he's certainly in support of the general. Let's go over to Middle Earth and take the fight to the enemy there camp. Like that's what he does, right? So he would certainly be sympathetic with Feanor saying, "Let's not stay here and mourn. Let's go pursue him and fight him and regain what we have lost." I would think that concept would certainly resonate with Orome more than it would with many of the other Valar. And then you add in the fact that he was a friend of Feanor and his sons. Of the other Valar, apart from Aule, he's one of the ones that we have shown the clearest relationship with. So, so I could see, again, not defending it, not saying that like what they did was okay, but not being opposed to the departure of even though he would, doubtless not approve of the open flouting of the Valar and the bad things that Feanor is saying about the Valar, the accusations he's leveling about the Valar. He wouldn't be cool with that. But I think he would be much more sympathetic to the whole project.
Yeah. Well, and I'm kind of wondering, is there any among the Valar again? Is there any attitude of either sort of an acknowledgement that this is proceeding according to a greater plan?
Right.
That it's tragic and we can mourn it along the way, but let's face it, this is where we're pointed all along, or maybe even an acknowledgement of their own responsibility for events. That like, look, guys, this is really bad. Feanor's doing bad stuff, but ultimately this is Melkor's fault.
Right.
And Melkor is our responsibility, and we should have handled him a long time ago.
Yes.
And now we should handle him. And at least if we're not going to, if we're going to leave Middle Earth and to its own devices, and the Noldor heading over there, we should like at least someone's going to oppose him. So we should let them go on their way. Yeah, they did bad stuff, but we shouldn't hinder them or interfere with them in any way because they're doing our job for us.
Right. Yeah, exactly. No, I think having some of those kinds of thoughts come out to sort of show the variety of opinion, to kind of put that out there, right? I mean, because we do want to plant the seeds for our viewers, right? To put out there that possibility, like, are the Valar, to what extent are the Valar wrong? To what extent are the Valar culpable? Those are questions I want them to be asking. I mean, I think that those are important questions. So, having that issue at least raised at the council seems to me like a pretty good idea. Yeah. Hakan says they could even go as far as having somebody say, "I told you so" to Manwë about the release of Melkor. Possibly so, right? Yeah. Well, how well did that work out last time, Manwë? But yeah, I don't know if we want it necessarily to get as chippy as that, but yeah, again, those are the questions, right, that I think are really important. Okay. We should move on. Where do we want to place this? Thinking about the storm of Uinen. So Uinen goes out later on, and we have the storm in which the many of the ships are sunk. That's a dramatic scene, which will be really impressive on screen. I don't see too much for us to discuss with it, really. I don't want to show the one thing that I would say about it is that I would want it to be, again, the emphasis in the text is that it is an expression of her anger, yes, but of her grief more even than of her anger. Osse's impulse would be to go and like beat the crap out of the Noldor, right? Uinen's is to weep over the Teleri, but her weeping is as wild as the the anger of Osse. When do we do this? Ooh, hang on, wait. Hakan is an important question, Dave. I can't believe we didn't think of this already. Is Huan at Alqualande, and if so, what does he do? We forgot our Huan cameo.
Oh, man.
Remember, Huan's reaction to things that happen on screen is always a direct cue to the viewer as to how they should respond, right? Huan is always right. Huan is that's like the rule, right? Huan is always right in his response. So,
Yes.
and so yeah, so he's got to be there. And Marie, I agree. Logically, he's got to be on the ships. Golly, that's tough though, because we can't have him turning on Celegorm yet, right? That he still has to be a faithful, servant of Celegorm for a long time to come. But it's hard to imagine Huan being okay with it's hard knowing who he is, who Celegorm is. It's hard to imagine Celegorm not enthusiastically joining in with his father. I mean, Celegorm's got to kill some folks, right? Multiple folks, you'd think. And it's hard to imagine Huan being okay with it.
How about Huan surreptitiously saving people?
Sorry. Well, see, I was thinking of that, but
like he's in the background, and we just see him grab some Teleri children who are about to be viciously killed by some Noldor thugs, and he grabs them and carries them away to safety.
We could even have him like sort of acting ambivalently, right? Like, the Noldor are fighting the unarmed Teleri on board the ships, and they're drawing their swords. We could have Huan attack the Teleri, but he just knocks them off the boat, right, to prevent them being killed, basically at the swords of the Noldor. But see, again, the problem is if we have Huan acting in clear opposition to Celegorm, we can set up the fact that maybe the two of them are not always going to see eye to eye, right? I mean, I think this is actually a really good moment for us to foreshadow the fact that the day is going to come when the two of them are going to go their separate ways, right? When maybe what needs to happen is that there is a problem with, like, Huan is not on board with, so to speak, with what Celegorm is doing, but they reconcile afterwards, right? Maybe we can show an actual reconciliation. I don't know how we do, a reconciliation and like how we show Celegorm and Huan apologizing and making up when one of them is totally nonverbal. Yeah. One way that we could, see, but obviously the easiest thing to do is just to avoid it entirely and leave it out, but that's cowardly. We need to deal with this.
I don't know. Discretion may be the better part of valor here. Well, at what point, hey, so here's a question. Which possibly we've covered in the past and I've forgotten. When is Huan given to Celegorm?
We did do that earlier. I think when we had them, because we did a hunting scene with Orome and the Sons of Feanor, mostly to introduce Huan and give him over there.
Can we retcon it
now?
Well,
I mean, our plot outline folks love it when we change season 2 retroactively.
Well, here's a thought, a way to dodge this. Suppose we retcon this so that Huan hasn't been given to Celegorm yet, so there's no question of Huan being involved. Huan's with the Valar, let's say, still. And then maybe what happens is Orome sends Huan with Celegorm to keep an eye on the Sons of Feanor. This is part of the Orome, right,
the Orome being kind of pro Noldor, yeah.
Sort of I don't approve what's going on and stuff, but they're heading to Middle Earth and they're going to oppose Melkor, who ultimately is the real bad guy.
Yeah.
Maybe I can kind of steer things in the right direction. and also, also some amount of like, this is your destiny anyway. You're supposed to go there. So what if we retconned it and this is where Huon is given to Celegorm.
Yeah.
Maybe we could even have a Celegorm Orome conversation as right before he boards the boat or something. Although it could look weird if Orome shows up at the bloodbath and doesn't do anything.
Right.
This is one way to resolve this problem of what's Huon doing now if he isn't involved.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting a lot of opposition to this suggestion here, Dave.
Why?
Well, okay.
People have a more constructive solution for why Huon is standing there watching his buddies murder people.
Not yet. But Karita makes an excellent point, and that is we don't want to undermine the significance of the moment when Huon turns against Celegorm to defend Luthien. The fact that is the breaking of a mutual bond, right? That the two of them were a team, and in this moment, that Huon is finally pushed to rejection of Celegorm and to opposing of him has to be a huge, huge deal.
Okay. So what you're saying is the only way to manage that is if he's complicit in kinslaying.
Sorry, I'm just laughing.
That much more powerful by making him tolerate kinslaying at this moment.
Right. No, it's just that Huon is a 3-strike policy, right? So the kinslaying was strike 1. The sort of like the imprisonment of Luthien is strike 2, and then like his attack on Luthien is strike 3. I'm kidding about that. But sorry, I was just laughing at Sarah Grant's comment, her paraphrase of your suggestion. Orome wades through the carnage to hand Celegorm a puppy. Just a great image. I just love that image.
Okay, I think we have to do it now.
But hang on. So Dave, here's my number one reason for not wanting to change the season 2 stuff. My number one reason is if we did that, we would lose all of those adorable scenes with like Huon looking miserable while things are falling apart at the end of season 2. Sure. I'm kind of attached to the role that we gave Huon at the end of season 2. So I'm for that reason alone, I'm reluctant. I do agree with Karita that I would like to foreground at the beginning. We're going to make that moment in season 5, the Beren and Luthien season, most poignant if we really show the unequivocal bond between Celegorm and Huon. Yeah. And Karita also points out, she says, your suggestion basically makes Huon a spy, which is much more of a cat thing than a dog thing anyhow.
Fair enough.
That's also kind of true.
I sort of agree it won't work, but what I do see is, unless we take the cowardly way out and we just omit
skip
it
it
from this scene, I don't see any way around Huon being complicit in the kinslay. I don't see any way. I'm sure we can come up with a way to tap dance out of it. But there's no way around the fact that he's either going to be involved, actively supporting it, or at a minimum, he's going to be standing by doing nothing, which undermines the Huon's always right.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the only possible explanation can be some kind of metaphysical, overarching, like, now is not my time type thing.
Right.
There's no elegant way to portray that on screen other than some really clunky, in the middle of an action scene, some clunky exposition. That our viewers aren't going to understand. That will only make sense in retrospect after we see what goes on with him later. Or if we somehow introduce the prophecy, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I think within the context of like the book, like let's say Tolkien had added a scene of Huon here, like it could be explained away because the narrator in the published Silmarillion kind of has that ability to kind of foreshadow and, you know, reference things that are going to happen, reference things that have happened, you know, do that kind of exposition, like, you know, Huon, you know, have some line about Huon mourned what was happening, and but knew that his time had not come to blah 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 whatever. But man, there just is no good way to do that on screen.
No,
it's
there
not
isn't.
Be really clunky.
I agree. That would be really clunky because I mean the problem, right, is doing this with a completely nonverbal character. Okay, all right. So I say,
Thought bubble.
Huh? Thought bubble. Yeah, exactly. Now that's an elegant way to do it, right? If that doesn't say elegant, what does?
Do the little sound effect as it pops up.
Yeah.
I vote cowardice.
Okay, no. I think we make him limitedly complicit. I'm okay with it. I think we make him be loyal to. All we need, right? We need two things. We need him to be loyal to Celegorm, but we also need him to not be all in on the slaying, right? He has to be loyal to Celegorm, but troubled by what's happening. So I say we could accomplish this, I think, by showing him defending Celegorm, right? Non-lethally, right? Again, he is defending Celegorm by like knocking Teleri off the boat, not by savaging them. There's no blood on Huon's jaws, right, during this whole fight.
No, I like this idea, and what if in addition to, what if he's not just knocking Teleri off the boat? What if he's knocking Noldor off the boat? What if basically every Huon intervention is designed to prevent some form of
the problem,
mortal wound or slaying.
Right. The problem that I have is that he would have to like knock Celegorm off the boat then. What if he does knock Celegorm off the boat?
What if his main intervention is to remove Celegorm from the fray?
Right, exactly. Like let's save you from yourself here, Celegorm. I'm not sure I hate that idea, actually. One other thing.
Celegorm gets cornered, and Huon jumps in, knocks some Teleri off the boat, and then carries Celegorm away.
But we can't prevent.
He carries Celegorm onto a boat that's already sailing. That is Teleri free.
Right, and just Teleri free. Well, all of them are gonna have Teleri coming up to them though, so I don't think that there's any non-combat boats. But
what if there's like a lead ship that is already, there's a couple ships that are already well on their way out into the ocean.
No, because they've got to pass under the gates still and stuff. No, because Celegorm's got to be red-handed though. I mean, Celegorm needs to kill folks. Like that's got to happen. I mean, we have to show Celegorm's willingness to get violent and kill people because that's one of the roles he plays as one of the sons of Feanor.
Right, but what if we show him? What if we sort of, what the angle I'm trying to take is like, what if he is on the front lines? Like, he's still on the beach. He's not on a ship sailing. He's in the thick of things where he can kill the most Teleri. And then at one point he kind of gets himself into trouble. And he's planning maybe a blaze of glory, to go down in a blaze of glory, killing as many people as he can. Huon jumps in, growls, knocks a bunch of Teleri over, grabs Celegorm, and dives into the water and starts swimming after the boats. And sort of gets him out of the fray, where maybe he's not completely safe, but at least he can't kill anyone else.
Well, logistically, though, the Sons of Feanor aren't fighting on the beach. They're all fighting on the boats. Maybe some of them on the quay, but most of them on the boats, I think.
Sure.
And Feanor and his sons in particular would be... Yeah.
I guess you could just clear the boat. So, like, let's say there's Teleri on the boat, and Celegorm's killing them all, and then Huon jumps in and knocks all the Teleri into the water and clears the boat. It's like, okay, well, problem solved. You can't kill anyone else now.
Yeah,
but you're no longer in danger apart from the guys on the gates.
Right. And, so that we can show... Oh, by the way, we need to have, at least once, we need to have Huon leap up and catch an arrow in his jaws when somebody shoots at Caligorm. Because we got to set that up, right? He does that for Luthien later on. So we have to show Huon's arrow intercepting ability. Because we get the opportunity to do that here, right? Anyway, okay. I like the idea of him intervening, like basically so having him clear the ship so that Caligorm is standing there like, with a blood-soaked sword, looking around for more Teleri to kill, but there aren't any more. And he basically feels like the conqueror, right? Who has captured his ship. When actually, of course, it's Huon who chiefly did so, and did so by non-lethally getting rid of all the Teleri off the boat. I would like to have somebody mentioned this earlier on, and I really like the concept at a key moment in the scene. We should have Huon just howling in misery at what's happening. In fact, I think the moment that we can have Huon howling is maybe the moment when Fingolfin and Feanor exchange that look we were talking about, right? Feanor down on the ship standing over the corpse of Olwe, and Fingolfin looking down, himself covered with the blood of the Teleri up on the bridge, and the two of them exchange this glance as Feanor sails under, and we cut to Huon and have Huon throw back his head and howl, as Tony says, at the death of Olwe itself. Possibly. Yeah. So that basically this sort of mournful howl of Huon, which rises up above the conflict, could become a kind of, sort of symbol of the sort of the sorrow in that month, sort of the transition to weeping right at the end of the fight. Huon can be disturbed at what has happened. We can see him kind of out of sync with Caligorm, but it wouldn't necessarily have to, so he can be troubled by what he has seen Caligorm do. But in that moment, he's been focused primarily on defending Caligorm. So I don't think it needs to come to a crisis there. See, this is way better than cowardice. We can also, it gives us some other, a really logical other focus of action. Before we just kind of had the two, right? We had Feanor's ship with Feanor and Olwe, and we had the bridge with Fingolfin, and then briefly Finarfin running down and exclaiming in horror and chucking away his sword. By having another ship fight that we can focus on with Huon and Caligorm, that gives us a good opportunity to kind of spread things out a little.
And additional Huon action scenes never go wrong.
Additional Huon scenes are always good. I mean, I think that which is my primary reason not to want to take the cowardly option, because more Huon has to be good. Phil asks the question: would each son of Feanor be on a separate ship? I'm thinking yes. I mean, maybe the twins go on one ship. But oh wait, hang on. Were we going to kill off the twins? Were we going to kill off any Feanorians? I'm forgetting. We had talked about this before, didn't we?
I don't remember.
Are we gonna? Well, we were gonna kill off Irame, right? Fingolfin's sister. Oh, in the burning. Wait, or not here. Okay, right. Okay, yeah. So no. So we're not gonna kill any of the Feanorians yet. Right. Got it. Okay. Couldn't remember how we were planning to do that. Okay.
So we're now an hour and a half into our podcast about Valerian.
Exactly. You want to make a virtue out of necessity, and because first of all, let me just say, I'm not sorry. I don't repent. of spending extra time talking about the kinslaying, because this is the kinslaying, for crying out loud. Let's get this right. So you want to just postpone that, and we'll talk about episode 3 next time? Spend a whole episode on it rather than trying to squeeze it into, half an hour or less at the end here.
Yep. Let's just double down.
Let's double down. Yeah, because we've kind of done that anyway.
Hobbit Day. We're kicking off the Signum University Fall Fundraising event with a bonus Hobbit Day Silmarillion film podcast that was totally unexpected, in which we do an in-depth discussion about the kinslaying.
That's right.
Specifically, Huon's role.
That's right.
So,
bonus kinslaying as a special treat. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Karita wants to talk about Onin more. Do you want to? I mean, I did.
Well, in light of our decision, why not?
Okay. All right. Yeah, I agree. Why not? Let's do that. So
let's just go down the list of Valar and do a detailed analysis of each of their reactions.
Well, no, we already talked about that. But let's Onin and the Storm. We can work that out in a little bit more detail.
Yeah. This is a good idea.
Yeah.
I would like to figure out where this is going to belong to, what episode, and that sort of thing.
Right. Actually, wait. Before we go back to Onin, since we're focused on the elf on elf action there in the kinslaying. One other question that we need to consider. Where's Always daughter? How are we going to show her? So Always daughter is the wife of Finarfin, mother of these kids, right? Mother of Galadriel and Finrod and the rest of them. I ignore who will be one of our heroes in season 3. She's really important. She's going to be central. She's going to be a central figure, not a player, but a central figure in the Thingol, Galadriel, Finrod stuff that we had talked about before, right? That is the fact that the people of Finarfin are related to the Teleri, and therefore also the kinspeople of Thingol. So, I mean, the fact that she is their mom is a really big deal, right, for the political situation of season 4. So I think we need to really emphasize her and her significance there, as she is one of the ones who is most plainly sort of torn between the two, right? She, having very close ties to both the Teleri and to the Noldor here. Yeah, Phil, this is Eowyn that we're talking about. Exactly. I think she's got to be with Finarfin. If she's in the host, is she in the city? That's my question. So first question, is she in the city with her dad? I mean, presumably, she lives with her husband, but we could put her on the other side, right? That is just physically. She could have been with her dad as the Noldor are advancing, right? She could have gone on ahead to speak with her father easily. She could hear Feanor's speeches and hear of the plans to go get the ships and go sort of to warn her dad and discuss it with him in advance. So, I mean, she could be physically in the city when Feanor and the rest of them attack. Or even at the time of the parley. She didn't have to go on ahead. At the time of the parley, she could stay behind to speak with her father and therefore still be with her dad when Feanor marches down and starts possessing the ships. So do we want her coming in with Finarfin at the end, or do we want her being in the city the whole time and therefore at risk, probably not dying, but at risk during the whole, possibly in the midst of the combat?
That would certainly up the stakes for Finarfin.
Right. Ooh, and as Margaret points out,
it would be really odd if he tossed his sword away while his wife was still in danger.
yeah, good point. Good point. Margaret, Joyce makes an excellent point as well. That's got to be significant for Galadriel as well. Thinking back to where we started this conversation, Galadriel would be seeing her mom, right? There. So, first, I like her being in the city, because if she's with Finarfin, she's just a sidekick, right? She's not going to be a focal point in the same way that she could easily be made a focal point if she's there in the city. Having her be there and be a proximate eyewitness to her father's being killed by her half-brother-in-law, as Phil Boswell just paraphrased it, and have her be seen by Galadriel. And there's too much potential for emotional drama there, I think, to leave her out of the city entirely. Again, especially since she becomes merely an extension of Finarfin at that point. Emphasizing her role, there is a sense, of course, in which, figuratively speaking at least, Eowyn is in the middle of the kinslaying, right? I mean, she is a central figure in a way that Finarfin himself is not even a central figure, right? But as the Teleri who is married to to one of the princes of the Noldor, she's sort of at issue in a sense, right? So I think she really should be in the city. Where do we have her? Options. On a boat, right? Is she on a boat and fighting with one of the Fëanorians, right? Do we have her with Olwe, right? Is she with Olwe pursuing Fëanor and actually standing on the same ship with Fëanor when Fëanor kills Olwe? That's another possibility. Is she on the bridge with the archers, looking down, presumably not shooting a bow herself? Or does she?
I think I like the idea of her being... So are we gonna have her forewarn Olwe about the Noldor's plans? I'm of two minds about it.
I am
but
too.
I'm kind of, the direction I'm heading in is like kind of like the idea of of her trying to lead some form of nonviolent resistance, like refusing to give over the boat and refusing to leave the boat, but not fighting back.
Right.
And sort of taking advantage of the fact that and I don't know, maybe it's a question whether this is consistent with Fëanor's character, but taking advantage of the fact that most of the Noldor probably are smart enough not to harm her,
right?
Because they know that would piss off Finarfin.
That's not a good look. Not that any of it is, but yeah, exactly. That would clearly be a serious. So, I mean, it really does point. It really would exacerbate the complicated loyalties and morality of the situation, right? I'm not sure I like the idea. I mean, I want her to be there, but the more I think about it, the less I like the idea of her running on ahead to warn her father, mostly because if she looks like a snitch, it could make her look sneaky and unattractive, I don't know that, especially since this is likely to be pretty close to our first impression of her, right? And if the first role that she plays in the larger kinslaying scenario is as like a tattletale, that's not a particularly good look for her either, right? Now, someone was asking before. Phil Boswell was asking if she's on a boat, if she's on the boat with Olwe, how would she survive? I have an answer to that, Phil. She casts herself into the sea in a move which is visually foreshadowing Elwing casting herself into the sea at the kinslaying at the Bay of Valar.
Have Huon throw her into the sea.
I don't think I didn't toy with the idea, but no. See, like the parallel with Elwing, I really like, right? Because Elwing, same circumstances, right? Kinslaying and Elwing cast herself into the sea. So I like that concept, right, of Eowyn casting herself into the sea, but I mean, it's not like she's not gonna turn into a seagull or anything, but again, just like to visually have that parallel, I think is kind of cool. So that's how I'd save her from getting killed on the boat. Marie does point out very appropriately that having her join her father against her husband is problematic if she is like setting off in a boat with Olwe to go. But again, remember, Olwe, it's not like Olwe is attacking, right? He's not pursuing Feanor's boat in order to assault him. He's pursuing Feanor's boat in order to exhort him, right, to stop what he's doing and to ask him to. So it's not like an act of aggression on her part. Like, I'm going to attack my husband's half-brother, you know. And yeah, Hakon, exactly. She'd try to talk some sense into Feanor. Okay, so I like that. I think that could work. But here's the other thing I kind of like. I kind of like having her on the bridge. Because if she's on the bridge, then she is in the way when Fingolfin's people, including her daughter Galadriel, attack, right? And she could still cast herself off the bridge into the sea. And so we could still get the whole casting into the sea. And indeed, throwing herself into the sea from the bridge would be more visually dramatic, right? It would be more visually striking to see her falling from a height and disappearing into the sea. I like that. I like that. Yeah, Phil, I would assume she would be a good swimmer. I mean, the downside of this is that it would be kind of anticlimactic in a sense, right? If it would look like she was dying, probably. And so later on, having her be like, "I'm okay," right? Or like have her pop up again. We could have her reunited with Finarfin in a moment of relief, right? So we have Finarfin running down to the shore and searching for his wife, and we could have her, sort of coming up onto the shore and reunited with him. The waterlogged Eowyn is dragged into a rescue boat, says Marie. When I'm thinking of her, emerging herself on the shore and having a damp hug with Finarfin, essentially. Karina points out that that's a little bit Disney Pocahontas. I hear ya. Phil does point out that this would pull Finarfin out of the fray and prevent the question of, is he going to use his sword to defend his wife's kin or not? If he's distracted by finding his wife and being concerned for her well-being, she could be alive but not completely well, right, after falling from the bridge and swimming to the shore. And I don't think the bridge needs to be so high that the fall couldn't be survivable, Zachary. Especially, I mean, remember, elves, right? These are Calaquenti we're talking about. They can jump off a bridge and survive the fall. Yeah, I like this. So, but how would this go back now? This has to inform our Galadriel discussion, though, right? We talked about Galadriel before and her choices. If Eowyn's going to be on, if her mom's on the bridge, we've got to bring that in, right? How can we make that fit with the guilt on her head, but no blood on her hands policy that we were going to try to pursue with Galadriel early on? See, it's hard. The more when I think about this, there's a lot of like raw emotional power to Galadriel coming in and seeing her mom on the other side, seeing her mom on the among the ranks of the people that they're charging. But I can't reconcile it with Galadriel's guilt. I mean, how would that not result in Galadriel trying to stop just stop people from attacking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry, Karita. We're totally going to get to Uonin. We're going to segue to Uonin right from this. I just wanted to come back to Galadriel because I've got to sort out the Galadriel and her mom issue. But as soon as we do that, we're coming back to Uonin, Karita. I promise. Okay. It's almost impossible for me to reconcile. Maybe Galadriel doesn't see her until she throws herself off the bridge. Maybe that's when Galadriel sees her. Maybe that's the thing that really strikes Galadriel's own sense of her guilt home, right? When she sees her mother, like, climb up onto the parapet and leap, throw herself off into the sea. Tony Mead is still suggesting that Galadriel's role should be like Frodo's in the Battle of Bywater, sort of stepping aside and making sure that as few people get killed on either side as possible. But she's got to be guilty. Again, not blood guilty, as we talked about. She doesn't have to have killed any Teleri herself. She doesn't necessarily have to have killed anybody. In fact, I'd quite rather it if she didn't, I think. Again, thinking of those conversations with Melian. Galadriel's... Thinking about the conversations we had through season 2 about those, like, the point of fall, right? Somebody inclining in one way, and then they cross a line, right? Just as we see in the Fellowship of the Ring, right? With Boromir leaning, and he crosses the line when he tries to take the ring from Frodo. And is almost immediately redeemed, right? For Galadriel, that turning point isn't yet. That turning point for me, as I said earlier, is when she chooses not to leave at the end of the first age, right? So we're still way early on in her process. And if she actually is standing there with a bloody sword, whoever's blood is on it, whether the blood on it is Noldor or Teleri, it makes her too guilty. It makes her too fallen already. And I don't really want Galadriel to be either fallen to that extent or fallen in that way yet. So I want her to be not innocent of blood, but Tony, she's got to be guilty of something, though. She's got to be there. I think there needs to be culpability. And again, especially since, as I said, her dealing with her guilt from this should be part of what leads her to the important decision, to the decision, to her fall later on. Hallstein says we could let Galadriel think that she pushed Eowyn off the bridge. That would be interesting. Like, Mom! Yeah, maybe. I don't know how that would work, though. But I like the idea of her not seeing Eowyn until the last minute, and when she sees her mother falling from the bridge, that's the moment of, like, the true, like, that's when conscience smites, right? Yeah. Ooh, Zachary, I like that. Zachary Coleman was just saying, what if seeing Galadriel among the attackers is what causes Eowyn to jump off the bridge? I like that. I like that. So we make that. So Galadriel doesn't see her. Galadriel doesn't see her. Eowyn sees her first, and Eowyn throws herself off the bridge, and that's when Galadriel sees her and is like, and freezes in her tracks. Right. Maybe she was actually charging and might have killed somebody had that not happened.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. So Karita, great question. Karita asks a very sensible question. Why is Eowyn jumping exactly again? Karita, she's jumping in order to establish a parallel with Elwing. Obviously, that's what motivates her. Just kidding. No, my thought of Eowyn's mentality there, you know, her thought process. She's escaping. Like, she wants out of the situation. Like, she does not want either to she's not going to help her husband's people. She can't fight for her own people against her husband's people. Like, basically her choice to simply like escape. There is definitely, it's not a suicide attempt exactly, but there's definitely despair involved there. Like, all she can do is, like, she is in this completely impossible situation, and she all she can do, like, her only option is to just like escape from it, essentially. And so she throws herself off the bridge into the water, and there should be uncertainty. You know, has she died? And was she trying to kill herself? Yeah, Marie, there's an element of despair in it, but as you say, there's also an element of jumping out of a burning building too. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So maybe Galadriel's guiltiness is she doesn't kill anybody, but she was planning to. Maybe she decides that she does charge. Irame dies, right? Her aunt is killed right near her. And she charges with like murderous intent. And then she sees her mother jump, and then her mother sees her charging and jumps, and she sees her mother jump and freezes, right? So she never commits the guilty act. She never does shed blood, but she knows she intended to. Maybe that would work. Okay, let's talk about Uonin before Karita hunts me down. So, how do we want to handle Uonin's grief?
Is she just grieving and raging, or is she explicitly attacking the Noldor?
Well, I mean, two options, right? One is, as Karita was just suggesting, raw grief, which manifests itself as the storm, right? But at the same time, I mean, she's got to be mad, right? She's got to be mad. We've got to know she's mad. So her grief happens to manifest itself in a storm, and it's like, oops, oh golly, look at that. Accidentally killed a bunch of the jerks who just killed my friends. Like, it's kind of hard to buy, you know? So how do we, as Milthalia is saying, it can be raw grief, but yet she doesn't feel sorry that the ship's crashed, right? So, I mean, but at the same time, I don't want it to just be like Uonin goes to war, you know, like Uonin vengefully smites the Noldor. Even if only because, I mean, we can't have her just completely defying Manwë either. You know, Manwë says, well, okay, no, nobody can intervene. And it's hard to handle Uonin merely saying, you know, forget that, and like she's gonna do it anyway, right? I mean, I don't want her to be that openly rebellious, because there'd be consequences to that I don't think we want to deal with. Hakan has the interesting suggestion. What if Ase holds her back? That would be kind of interesting, right? given Ase's history. It sure would, and would show, of course, her influence over him, or that is the influence that she has had on him, the way in which he has sort of changed and grown. Okay, but if she doesn't intend to attack the Noldor, if again she just like the strength of her grief and anger manifests itself, so like she really wants to go after the Noldor, and I'll say restrains her. I like that idea, Hakan. But she's upset, right? So I mean, she's weeping, and and we see her tears and like the emotional turmoil of Unin's response to the kinslaying, which is important. It's important for us to show somebody reacting, with stormy emotion to this, because it's a stormy emotion kind of thing. Anyway, so if she's not attacking the Noldor, but again, her raw emotion manifests itself in the storm, and as Karita says, she's guilty of manslaughter, not murder, elf slaughter, not murder. I can see that, but again, my problem is, don't we have to handle the reaction to that? I mean, she's going to perceive the fact that many of the Noldor were killed as a result of her grief. How do we handle that? Like, it's hard to make knowing that we can't. How can we convincingly make this look like an accident when what happens would seem to be so manifestly what she obviously wanted to happen, right? So, I don't know. That's why I think there has to be an element of intent from the beginning. Maybe she goes out from the council. We can see her sort of looking out on or down on, where would she be standing? Maybe she's standing on the bridge where the archers were. And she's after the fight. So the Noldor are gone. Fingolfin and Finarfin have marched away. The Feanorians have sailed away. The ships have all left the harbor. She's standing on the bridge. And she's standing on the bridge like with her feet like in the blood of the Teleri who were killed on top of the bridge, right? And she's looking down on the I'm thinking of the bridge because I want her looking down on the ships that the Feanorians are sailing, right? It's the vantage point that I'm thinking of, and I don't want her just like hovering in the sky because she's not a sky person. She's a sea person. But if she's in the sea, we could have her looking up at them, but the vantage point is hard to do. Again, I'm kind of picturing her looking down, and I kind of like the idea of her being surrounded, like actually like, I mean, it would be kind of disturbing, right? To show her standing there barefoot in like a pool of the blood of the Teleri, right? To actually show the blood of the Teleri on her feet as she's standing there weeping over so she's looking down, and her looking down would give us an opportunity to show the grief of the Teleri, right? To show Teleri mourning for their kin, who have been killed. And she looks out at the ships and at Feanor. Maybe we give a little, close-up shot of Feanor looking smug and self-satisfied. Maybe we don't. And she gets angry, right? She's mourning, she's weeping the whole time that she's there. Then she looks down and she sees the ships of the Feanor, and she's angry, and she cries out and responds in anger, and the storm picks up, right? Then she could be restrained, right? Then Ase comes and stops her. And so the intervention of, so she's not openly rebelling. She's not like, forget what Manwë says, I'm going to attack them anyway. She's not intending to. She's overcome, right? And her grief and raw emotion manifests itself in the storm, and the storm wipes the smirk off of Feanor's face, right? And we see many of the ships wrecked, and then Ase comes and lays that ironically sort of calming hand on Onin, right? And recalls her to herself, and she stops. So I think that that would work because then we would see her choosing to restrain herself, choosing to obey, right? Choosing to pull back from rebellion, which prevents the problem of just her being flat out in open defiance, which I'm not super comfortable with. Karita wants to compromise. Karita wanted her in the water at first. Okay, Karita's compromise solution is she's on the bridge at first, but the storm should start when she's touching the water. What about her hair? We do something with her hair? Remember, Onin's hair is a thing, right? It's enormously long. It goes through the sea, right? It would look really dumb, though, if she's standing up on the bridge and her hair is still stretching down into the water. That would look odd. Marie, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Theoretically, it is, of course, perfectly in character for her hair to be extending out into the water, even while she's standing up on the arch. But I kind of think it would be, it would look dumb. We could have her descend into the water. She could dive from the bridge. Of course, then we have her recapitulating the same movement as Eowyn, which I think might be too much. But anyway, the idea of her descending from the bridge into the water, and when she does, the storm kicks up, or like a water spout or something like that. I could see that. I kind of like the even more sort of understated, just as she's standing there weeping, she could just cry out, so she's weeping, and then she just yells. She just screams in grief and in anger. And when she screams, the storm comes, Or we could do it, Marielle, that image that you were just depicting of her diving into the sea and then emerging, and as she emerges from the sea, she screams her scream that starts the storm. That could be really visually striking. Yeah. Well, I'm open to suggestions on the particular details of how that gets kind of blocked and staged.
I think we can delegate that.
Yeah. Now, Brianna thinks that Brianna disagrees with it looking dumb, and Brianna, I want to credit you for taking me to task on this point more than once before on Twitter. Brianna has urged me in times past when I have been too quick to dismiss some kind of effect as looking dumb on screen. She has urged me to give the artists a chance and see what they can do with it to make it look awesome instead of dumb. So, Brianna, I concede. And I agree also, if we do in some way show her hair still sort of surrounding her and extending into the water, even from a distance, sort of embracing the harbor, right? It's always how I kind of pictured it. Then it would enable us to get her down into the water without her simply looking like she's casting herself off in that same sort of quasi-suicidal motion that we gave to Eowyn earlier. It would enable us to differentiate her getting from the bridge to the water from the way that Eowyn got from the bridge to the water. So okay, Brianna, I agree. I'll give the visual artist a chance to make the extremely long hair of Uinen look cool instead of dumb. So okay, good. I'm willing. Okay, cool. Last question, and then we got to go. Do we do all this stuff at the beginning of episode 3? The Council of the Gods, Uinen and the Storm. If we end episode 2 with Feanor and Fingolfin and Huan howling in misery, right? If that's the end of episode 2, if episode 3 begins, it could pick up here, right? And we could have a little bit of the passing of, we could start with the Council of the Valar and then segue from that to Uinen. Uinen doesn't have to be at the council, right? We can have the council with the Valar and then just cut from there to Uinen looking down from the bridge. The fact that we are there at the bridge and we can still see the ships, but they're not where they were before, shows that some time has passed, but not very much, so that we can have, like, the corpses of the Teleri would not necessarily still be on the bridge. They could be laid out down on the docks and streets, the beaches of Alqualande. But the blood is still there, right? And the ships are still visible out there in the sea. Hakon wants it in episode 2. I can't imagine we're going to have the time. And anyway, I want the death of Olwe to be the culmination there of episode 2. We could squeeze it in, but I don't know. But Hakon, at the same time, I don't love it in episode 3 either. I don't love it in episode 3. Because episode 3 is meanwhile back in Beleriand. I mean, this is like the of the Sindar episode, right? So we yeah. Yeah, but if we save it, we lose the time frame. One other option, of course, would just be to push it forward, right, to when we come back to the Noldor. But that's like 3 episodes from now, and we can't make no time at all pass in between there. Yeah. Okay, Maria, I like that, and I know that was one of the suggestions. If we have it at the beginning of episode 3, we can then use that as a transition. We can use Círdan the Shipwright as the transition from the mariners over in Alqualande. And actually, yeah, that cut, Marie, seems to me like it would actually work pretty well, right? To have the storm, Uinen, Osse, and the storm, right? And the wreck of the ships, and the grief of the Teleri, and to cut from that to Círdan the Shipwright looking out over the sea, staring off into the west, with a somber and indefinable expression on his face, right? The Círdan maybe even getting no dialogue, but having that look on his face that says something like, it is as if I heard millions of voices crying out in pain and were suddenly silenced. Like, that should be the look that he has there, right? Yeah. Okay. We can come back to that as we think through more. I want to make sure that if we have it at the beginning of episode 3 like that, I want to make sure that we can fit it organically in to the overall interest of episode 3. Okay. All right.
Yeah, let's like revisit this topic next time.
Yeah, next time as we transition into the actual Balerian stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure that it's a smooth transition, because I agree. I don't really see any other. There's really no other option but to do this. But
right.
I want to make sure that it doesn't feel shoehorned into an episode that's otherwise about the Sindar, not about the Noldor.
Yeah, we don't want this episode to feel like 2 different episodes that are like randomly spliced together. Which is definitely a possibility here. So, yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, good. So my questions from last time still stand. I know that some people have done, and that's just as well anyway, actually, because people only have had a week, somewhat less than a week, as the episode didn't get posted instantly. So, yeah, I just as well to have a little bit of extra time to build up to the meanwhile in Balerion stuff. So that's good. That's good. Okay. Excellent. Very good. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. I am perfectly at peace with our decision to make this functionally a second episode 2 thing. The fact that we had to leave episode 2 hanging in the middle the way that we did last time clearly demonstrated that one episode was not enough in which to talk about the kinslaying. Totally defensible. So thanks everybody for joining us. Don't forget, and especially for those of you who came in late, don't forget our fall fundraiser, which is now going on. So please, if you enjoy our Signum programming, I urge you to consider donating to support our stuff and what we do and our ability to continue programming like this through another year and beyond. And just to remind you briefly of how our special SilmFilm giveaway is going to work. We have some special prizes that we're going to give to everybody here who gives to support us. All you have to do, make a donation, then send an email to donate@signumu.org. Mention SilmFilm in the subject line, and you will be entered into our drawing for our special SilmFilm prizes and presents that we're going to be giving out as gratitude for those of you who are giving to support us.